Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. It's a new day, new week, new theme. We're going to be checking out some technical death metal this week, kicking it off with the band Artificial Brain. We're going to be looking at a song off of their self-titled album called Celestial Cyst, which that's a name. So, let's dive into this and see what Artificial Brain is bringing to the table today. This section feels a little muddy, but then we come to this. The guitars are clear, the bass is clear. It's a really interesting contrast of production. So I have a pretty solid 3/4 going on here. A bit of a harmonious dissonance there. Plenty of tension, but not in an overwhelming capacity. Oh, we've shifted to a 7. That's what it was. I've been trying to figure this out. Yeah. So much bass. A lot of that was coming from the vocals too, wasn't it? Interesting to go for a compressed clean. I don't think I've heard that in a death band before. I don't know if this is the chorus or not. This is the first section we started in, and we've heard it a few times now. I love the sheer variety in it, though. Whoa, 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 whoa. Is the drummer in 4? Yeah, I think the madman is. Okay, so that was the second time that we entered into that 7/8 section, or 7/4, you can count it either way. Um, where the drummer put in some blast beats, just constant snare attacks. And the first time, it actually caused me to get a bit lost in what was going on. I had heard that guitar riff before. I had recognized that that was a 7 guitar riff, but the drums, the snare accents were throwing me off. I was like, wait a second, this doesn't feel like 7. No, I counted it out right there. He's putting 8 snare accents in the space that the guitars are playing 7 beats. We have a 7 against 8 polyrhythm. What in the world? That's just bonkers. Because the thing is, man, is once you get it to higher and higher numbers and you start doing polyrhythms close like that, 7 and 8, they're only one beat difference. You start to get into some really funky polyrhythmic ideas. And yeah, that absolutely explains why it's such a tough time getting a read on that section the first time through. I'm glad they came back to that because I would have missed that detail entirely if it was a one and done concept. And yeah, coming back around to it, I'm just like, wait a second, I gotta figure this out before this song wraps up. I need to know what's going on here. Just bonkers. Who would choose to do that? The logical decision is to say we're already in 7. We already were doing odd accent points in here to already disrupt a little bit of that 7 with the snare accents. And the guitars have their own accent patterns going on. Da 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 da. So like, why am I gonna mess any of that up? And then it's like, actually no, I do want to. Let me put some, let me put some 4/4 in here. So yeah, just a bonkers idea. I think what I was going for there is that the logical idea would have just been to do those blast beats, but do 14 of them. 7 beats, eighth note blast beats. I guess they're not really blast beats at that point. It's just constant snare accents. Just makes sense for me to say blast beats, but at eighth notes, it doesn't really feel like you're blasting. It's just beats at that point. Yeah, it would have made sense just to do eighth notes across the 7 beats that you already have laid out in front of you by the rest of the band, and to have that rigidity of accent, of rhythm, and bringing that in just the force of it. And they're like, that wasn't good enough. We need the force, we need the rigidity, and we're gonna do a second rhythm here. I don't know, man. It works though. It really does. It's such an inspired decision. It just isn't the obvious one, and I'm glad they went for it. Very cool. All right, kind of a short song, and we do go through some sections quite a few times, so there's really not a lot of new writing coming up throughout this. We have what we heard at the outro, which I do think is the chorus. We heard that section a ton. Interestingly, though, we also kicked off the song with it, which isn't too common in metal, and well, it was 2022. Kicking your song off with the chorus was definitely popular 2 years ago, as a way to get the hook in the very beginning of the song. The first thing people hear, because of dwindling attention spans, people click out of music, TV shows, everything, YouTube videos, whatever, really quickly. And so it's the reason why when you go to watch a trailer, they'll have like 5 seconds of the most intense parts of the trailer. And then it'll be like, now here's your trailer. And it'll start proper with like the name of the production company and then like the name of the actors or whatever. Yeah, it's because they're trying to put the interesting part at the beginning to grab your attention because people are clicking away from stuff so fast. So pop music has gone in that route too, front loading the chorus to the beginning of the song. It's just not something we see too often in metal. So it's very interesting that that's how we started the song, and it is what I think is the chorus. When we hit the lyrics, I'll get a bit more information on that, but it is the section we land on most often. And I think for good reason. While I enjoyed the verses, the chorus is what stands out to me. I think it's the most interesting part of the track. We have The bass that comes in, we have the guitars that come in, we have excellent drum work that just consistently changes, and then, well, I mean, we have the growls too. They don't really stand out to me very much, and frequently they're kind of pushed into the mix quite a far more than I would do. I mean, I guess what I'm saying there is I wish I know metal likes to stuff the vocals into the mix, but I would have brought it out just a little bit more. It feels too hidden for me. That's a subjective thing though. The guitars though. We have two guitars pretty much doing the same thing over here. Lots of movement, constant eighth notes, interesting rhythmic patterns as far as notes that are accented, but they're both playing different sets of notes. So you get these really cool dyads that fluctuate between dissonance and harmony. Well, dissonance and consonance, technically, they're both forms of harmony, but usually when we say something is harmonious, we mean that it's positively harmonious, which is consonance. But we do have the dissonance, which is that clashing of sounds, that tension in the track. But then it sort of fluctuates back out to something more consonant, sounds better, and then more tense, and then the release. And we find this within the dyad harmony. Very cool idea that they have going on there. The bass frequently jumps between what sounds like pedal tone, I think, just to create this ridiculously large floor in the bass register, and then this moving lick. And it'll be like, oh, that was pretty cool. And then I check in the bass a little bit later, and it's just like pedal tones. I'm like, oh, well, that's a little boring. And I check in a little bit later, and they're like shredding on the bass. I'm like, dude, pick a lane, please. I really appreciate the the technical side. I'd like to hear more of that, but half the time I check in on what you're doing, you're just pedal toning it. But no, it's good contrast. Jokes aside. And I do think it's a nice way to create this ebb and flow throughout the section as well, where we have the more driving sections and then we have the ones that are sort of reined in, pulled back a little bit, allowing for room on the top end and really filling out this deep resonant bass down here at the bottom. And yeah, just the back and forth is nice, even if I think I would prefer more of that counterpoint coming from the bass. I can't argue that what they ended up doing wasn't probably a better decision in the long run, as it supports the song more so than my love just for lead bass work. All right. Um, I'll be completely honest. The verse and the chorus sort of bleed together for me. I know there are some differences to them, and the chorus is the part that I remember most, but it's still a lot of technical guitar work with dissonance and harmony and bass work that fluctuates in and out of technical and basic ideas. The drums, though, man, this is what really stands out for me in any of these sections, I suppose, is the fluidity of drum patterns, especially across the verse. It feels like the drummer isn't happy with a single pattern or even going back and forth between two patterns, and it almost feels like it's a linear series of drum patterns where they might do blast beats and then something a bit more simple, just accents on 2 and 4 and 7 or something, just a standard pattern for whatever time signature they might be in. And really focusing on cymbal work and then going back to blast beats and then moving into something that's a bit more tom and bass kick focused, and it feels like it's always moving forward. I can't really find the pattern or the loop to their patterns, and I find that really awesome. It keeps the song feeling fresh for me, and while a lot of the sonic qualities of the guitar and bass, and especially the vocals, as I mentioned, sort of blur together into like this singular vision of technical dissonant death metal, the drums feel like it's the one thing that keeps me pushing forward. I'm like, oh, that's new, that feels fresh, that's different, I like where that's going. Where everything else sort of just becomes the song. And the drummer's just super talented with the amount of variety that they can introduce into it, while also never really losing the intensity of it. Doesn't really matter if they're doing blast beats or something a bit more reserved. It all fits what the song's doing, which I find just phenomenal. Now, one part of surprise and a bit of disappointment is the vocals. I had mentioned that I would have liked them to come out of the mix just a hair bit. It feels a bit muffled with them as low as they are, kind of already pushing towards where the bass is as far as pitch goes, and being stuffed into the mix, just not having enough volume and presence to them already. There were a couple of places where honestly all I could hear is just the fry crackle coming from the vocalist, and I couldn't make out words or enunciations or even syllables. I just kind of heard the crackling that goes on from the fry vocals. The fry vocal portion of the growls. Let me put it that way, because he's not just doing what I did, of course. He has a lot of technique going on. I just can't really hear most of that. Um, oh man, speaking about that, real quick, contrast and going back and forth between ideas, kicking off the song, moving from that really muddy production into the super clear production where you could hear every instrument, that was wild. I'm not too sure what went on with that, but I appreciate it for its distinctiveness. Anyways, the vocalist here sometimes gets so low and so pushed into the mix I can't even hear him. But other times he shines through quite a bit more, and I would prefer more of that. But we also heard another style of vocal other than just a production change that I thought was really interesting as well. It was more of a compressed clean, utilizing his true vocal cords to create pitched sounds, almost as if they were actually they were singing. Um, and then putting this rasp, this fry crackle on top of it, the natural compression on top of it, and it's just tech death isn't a genre that I hear too much clean vocal in, and while this isn't entirely clean, it is still not entirely, what are those things called? False chord vocals. We actually have some pitch created here. I thought that was pretty awesome, and it helped cut through the noise because the bass is really bassy, and the guitars have a lot of bass frequency and resonance in them. The song is very bass heavy. And so the vocals being put down there is what makes it feel so drowned out. And so when the vocals just increase their pitch just a hair, it's really not that much. It's not like he's out here belting these really high notes, heavy metal style or anything like that. You know, he's not doing any Judas Priest stuff out here. But it's just enough to raise the vocal pitch above everything else in the band, and it just cuts through so much better while still having a bit more of that stuffed into the mix sound. It's not dominating, it doesn't have a pop style of presence to it, but it cuts through the noise better. And I don't really know a way to fix that unless the producer or engineer just brings up the growls, but they might end up losing some of their bassiness too. And there's that one point where I was like, dude, this is just massive bass right here, and I think a lot of that's coming from the vocals. So you might lose out on moments like that, but it would make the vocals more intelligible, which might not even be what fans want. I'm definitely not a metalhead. As much as I do enjoy metal from time to time, yeah, it's a genre I tend to have more issues with, more friction with than enjoyment. And vocals like this is one of those areas where I'm like, yeah, man, I would have, I would like it to be different. And fans of the genre and people who make metal, they're like, nah, dude, it belongs down there. I don't want to hear the vocals. I'm like, what's the point? Anyways, yeah. So, like I said, a point of contention, I would have liked to hear them, but also a point of amazement, something that I didn't expect to hear in this style and got a pretty cool taste of. Is there anything else that stands out to me here? I will say I am sick, a little under the weather here. I think it's mostly in the throat. However, there's a chance that it's partly in my ears too, which is what made this song sound so muffled. Honestly, I thought this song would have come. I didn't know, like, we've listened to Artificial Brain, but I didn't have like a year tied to them. And so when I saw that it was 2022 after listening to the song, I was like, oh, dang. I was honestly thinking it would be much earlier based on the production. So it might be that my ears are just a bit clogged up from whatever sickness I have going on in me. And maybe the song isn't as muffled as I thought it was. But yeah, I think that's the only caveat I have to this review here. I did have to turn up the volume just a hair bit louder than usual, so that kind of lends itself to maybe it's a me thing today. But, generally, I think I had a pretty good analysis here, and there's a lot of stuff to love about this track, especially if you enjoy slightly dissonant death metal. And even on that point, as I mentioned during the reaction, as dissonant as it gets, it still kind of works for me. And I'm usually a pretty big stickler about dissonance. I don't generally like it. And here I thought it was just a really beautiful texture, which is, let's chalk that up to me being sick, because that's not a normal opinion of mine. No, we'll put that up to Artificial Brain. They did a fantastic job balancing out, getting enough of the dissonance in there to create that texture, while also ensuring that it doesn't get too far into it and becoming, I don't know the right description for this. To me, dissonance easily turns into nails on a chalkboard, and they never quite hit that point. They went far enough to use it as a spice without letting it dominate the soup, so to speak. Let me hit some lyrics here, see what's going on with Celestial Cyst, and then we'll wrap this video up. Alright, so this song is about the destruction of Earth. Let me double check that. Yes, in a sense. I'm not sure if physically the planet is gone, or if just our idea of what Earth is gone. The idea of maybe being thrown back thousands of years in technology, or maybe the Earth becoming a disruptive place where it's on borderline uninhabitable. I'm not quite sure. But we have the opening line, descendants of the last surviving humans, grown now, having never known the world that's gone. We also have the final line, the world is gone, it's not a crime. So it doesn't quite explain what the world is gone means, or having grown up in a world that's gone. I initially read this as humans living on a spaceship, having Earth been destroyed, but maybe that's not necessarily the way it has to be. Actually, nope. Well, see, here we go. When the world was destroyed is a line from the second stanza. Is that physical destruction, or is it just our concept of the world destruction? I don't know. I think I'm going to go on the first, which is a bit more literal. And so then we have humans on a spaceship or maybe another planet growing up in a completely different world than the people who came before them. I can't think, ancestors. It speaks about all the ways that this wisdom has been passed down over the years. This knowledge, this history of Earth, or whatever world they came from. It could be a fantasy world where Earth doesn't exist. Maybe they call it Terran. And it speaks about how this wisdom has been passed down on maps and compasses and stuff like this, guides. But then we move from this disjointed narration and we move to a first-person idea. It says, cloaked within my lofty device, deliberately I've misled them. Like a god controlling the path, the blood on my hands marks a vision. Celestial cyst, the madness leaves me barren. So this appears to be the person who destroyed the Earth and is now passing the information of the Earth onto the next generation without telling them that he's the one who caused the planet to be destroyed. I keep saying Earth, could be any planet, whatever. But it speaks to a mental illness here. He says, barren, a frozen hole inside my brain, a cancer that eats away until I'm insane. The thoughts that torture me I keep within. The truth, I tortured them just on a whim. So he speaks about how he is just a person, but he's also a person who ended up destroying an entire planet and is feeding people lies. And he doesn't seem to really have remorse for any of this. He says, I'm manipulating the remaining minds. And then at the end, he goes, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the world is gone. It's not a crime. So he feels justified and feels no remorse for this destruction of the planet, forcing everyone off of it, and then also manipulating their history and understanding of what happened, and is now the leader, so to speak, possibly, of this group of people. And that's celestial cyst. I've been trying to figure out what that phrase means. A cyst is a growth of cells that typically create a sac, which can hold fluids and air or anything, really. And it is specifically, I think, supposed to be a grouping of cells that isn't supposed to be there naturally. It's an abnormal growth. I've been trying to figure out what a celestial abnormal growth would be, and trying to pair that with the idea, because he describes himself as a celestial cyst. He's the one who destroyed the planet and is now, steering this next generation. And I don't know, it's not really making a lot of clicking pieces for me. I don't know. If someone has any ideas on that, let me know. Speaking of ideas and letting me know things, those are my thoughts on artificial brain celestial cyst. Let me know down in the comment section if you enjoyed it, if there's anything that stood out to you, maybe just your own thoughts, opinions, and perspectives on it. Above the comment section is a description box. In there is a link for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for this one. We do have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to continue on checking out some more technical death metal. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.